Hi, and welcome once again to Ivy English. I'm Karen.
And I'm Chris Gorski.
Today is March 19th, and today we have an article about a subject that is near and dear to the hearts of most people I know.
Yeah, we're talking about noodles, which I don't know how exciting this sounds, but I was reflecting on this article. We will be talking about noodles of many kinds. And I was just thinking, this is a pretty straightforward article today, especially compared to, say, our other article, our English-only article this month.
The one about Niue.
But I was reflecting on this, and I said sometimes it's really valuable to read and learn about something in a new language when you're very knowledgeable about the topic. It takes away all the hard parts of learning. I know this topic, and now I'm seeing it just in another language. And it just makes facilitating the information that much easier.
So you should just focus on learning the words and the sentence patterns and fluency and things like that, since the content will be sort of familiar for most of you. But when I said it's a topic that's near and dear to the hearts of many people, I was just talking about food in general.
Yeah.
You know, if you just kind of listen to people talking on the MRT, what are they usually talking about?
Oh, food. Yeah. It's funny. It was one of the things I noticed very early on in my time in Taiwan when I got here, that people really love talking about food. I mean, they talk about food all the time. Something I always think is funny is my students, they're pretty young. They love to see what I'm eating and drinking. They'll stick their face right into
your food.
Comment on it. It's very endearing because they're very curious about it.
If you didn't have such an understanding heart as a loving teacher, I don't know if everybody would appreciate that.
I kind of, that's how I feel about it. I mean, get your sick, gross face out of here. I'll make fun of them for it, but yeah.
My daughter says her cat does that.
Yeah.
but she eats vegetables, and so the cat never really wants to eat it, but the cat is very curious.
You know, mentally, this is also my thought, but I didn't want to compare my students to, say, like an animal, but that was the idea.
It's a very sweet cat.
Curious. Take a look.
All right, so we are going to be talking about a specific kind of food that you're mostly familiar with, especially since there are a lot of chain restaurants that serve these kinds of Japanese dishes.
Yeah.
Okay, so our first paragraph, Japan, a paradise for noodle lovers. It's no secret that Japanese people have a deep affection for noodles. Like in the rest of East Asia, noodles are an important staple food, second only to rice. Japanese people have enjoyed noodles for over 1,000 years. The first noodles came from China and were introduced around 800 of the Common Era. As time passed, noodles in Japan not only became widespread, but also developed some unique Japanese characteristics.
The three most popular types of noodles in Japan are ramen, soba, and udon. Ramen, typically made from wheat flour, is usually thin and firm. The dough is kneaded and left to rest before it is stretched and cut into noodles. This step helps improve the texture of the noodles. They are often served in hot soup with either a soy sauce or miso base. However, different regions of Japan have their own specialty broths.
While Japanese people recognize that ramen was inspired by Chinese cuisine, soba and udon are considered thoroughly Japanese creations. Many Japanese ask, do you like soba or udon? In the same way people in other cultures ask, are you a cat or a dog person?
Soba noodles are made of buckwheat flour mixed with wheat flour. They are usually light brown and served in either a hot or cold broth with a salty dipping sauce called tsuyu. Cold soba noodles, served with seaweed and wasabi, are popular in the hot summer months. In winter, people enjoy soba in hot soup with fried tempura.
Udon noodles, also made from wheat flour, are unique because of their thickness, usually 4 to 6 millimeters. Udon noodles are soft, chewy, and filling. Like soba, they can be enjoyed both hot or cold depending on the season. Similar to ramen, different regions of Japan boast their own style of udon noodles and broths. And if it sounds like we stopped in the middle of things, we did because this is only part one of a 2-part article. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for the rest of the article. So we're going to go back to the beginning of part 1. Our title again, Japan, a paradise for noodle lovers. And I would say that China is too. China has so many kinds of noodles.
Are there places in the world that don't eat a lot of noodles? It's definitely anywhere cold where you can't always grow fruits or vegetables or grains. will have a preference for noodles. So all the northern climates, where's a place that they don't enjoy noodles? Does that place exist?
Well, I lived in the Republic of Georgia twice, and I don't remember eating noodles there.
Oh, man. Them poor people.
Oh, no. But they do have dumplings,
okay,
which came, I think, from Mongolia, originally from China. So they do have other related foods. But I don't remember
related food, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember noodles.
So paradise is a great word that we all should know. Most people know the word heaven, but we avoid it because of that kind of religious and Christian tie-in. But paradise quite literally means a high-walled garden. And the word is Farsi. That means like the Persian languages of Iran. Pay attention to that word. When we think of the word paradise, try to imagine a desert landscape, and now you have this high wall, and inside there's this beautiful green space where people feel comfortable and things are nice. It gives you a little context of what we're talking about. Don't think about the place in the sky.
It sounds a little bit like an oasis.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oasis. And there's a very specific Chinese translation for it. Look it up. We can't say it here. I think heaven is also usable, though.
I think so. I personally don't like that word choice.
I can understand. But if you really like noodles and you go to, say, a food court where they have all kinds of noodles, you could say, oh, my gosh, I'm in noodle heaven.
I agree. This is good context. And as a matter of fact, this is where I was thinking. This is a great place to talk about noodle phrases very quickly. So something like, I'm in something heaven, noodle heaven, any kind of food heaven is a great use here.
You really used your noodle to come up with that background.
And pay attention. We say noodle, not noodles. And a phrase that's pretty common is to throw something against the wall and see if it sticks. This is used in the thought that a cooked noodle will stick to a wall, and uncooked noodle will just immediately fall off. So we'll throw out some ideas and see what sounds good to us.
So some of them will stick, not all of them probably.
That's right.
And when I said you really used your noodle, you can guess from context what that means. It means to use your head or to use your brain. So I'm sure there are a lot of other things to noodle around.
That's right. There's actually quite a bunch. And I was just thinking, if I list like 10 of these, people are going to fall out of the chairs.
To noodle around just means to fool around. You don't have a specific goal. You're just kind of playing around and seeing what happens or just enjoying it. All right, our first paragraph. It's no secret that Japanese people have a deep affection for noodles. And I knew that anyway, but you really could learn that just by going around to restaurants and food courts in Taiwan because there are so many Japanese-style noodle shops.
Can I tell everyone? Okay, here's my hot take. I'm just going to throw it out there. I like Chinese food more than Japanese food. When I went to Japan, I have always been a little bit underwhelmed by Japanese flavors. And I know this is really controversial, and people get all mad at me, but 10 times out of 10, 100 times out of 100, I would take Chinese food over Japanese food. I said it.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and I can thoroughly understand that. But I don't eat meat, but I do eat fish. Mm-hmm. I eat a lot of sushi.
I have friends that do this, and they don't like my take, but this is my hot take.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I eat a lot of sushi.
By the way, when Karen says everyone's entitled to their own opinion, this is a really nice way of saying, man, I disagree.
I don't necessarily disagree. I'm
really?
open. I'm open to any point of view. Everybody's got their preferences, especially with food. And there's one other thing about food. Some people try to tell you how you should eat.
Oh, I know. Isn't that just the worst?
There are some basic principles. Don't eat sugar. Stay away from processed food. Eat more vegetables. All of that is true. But beyond that, how much meat and what proportion of vegetables and all this other stuff, should you eat rice and is bread bad? People have so many theories and they can't figure out exactly what is best for human bodies, even by now with all this research. And it seems that different diets are better for different people.
That's funny because I thought you were taking this in the direction of manners and customs.
No.
Personally, when people get too sweaty about the way food must be consumed in this style, in this order, it's just, I think these people get, if you appreciate these customs and cultures and you want to follow this strict regimen, that's great. But if you're a person that puts ketchup on your steak, I might laugh about it, but it's your business. That's right. I 100% am not going to judge you for it.
This woman in Japan wanted some sugar for her tea. And the waiter freaked out and said no. She says, I want to talk to the manager. The manager came and said, no, we don't do that. She says, okay, I'm going to order a coffee and then include some sugar with it. So she finally got her sugar for her tea. Now, they were very, very strict about it. Now, that isn't what I meant. I mean that it seems that different diets suit different people differently.
Sure.
So you can't really tell people how to eat. Just stay away from sugar, eat more vegetables, and stay away from processed food. All right, let's go to the next sentence. Like in the rest of East Asia, noodles are an important staple food, second only to rice. So rice is still the winner in a place like China, in Taiwan, Southeast Asia, Korea, Japan. Rice is the winner. And rice, especially in the South, more than in the North. But noodles are number 2.
Staple food is an Old English word that means pillar or post. So when we talk about staple foods, it sounds just like that little metal thing that holds your paper together. And that's a great way for learning it. But as a matter of fact, the etymology of this word is it's a post. It's a thing that holds up a roof or a building.
Let's talk about a related expression now that you've mentioned pillar. What is a pillar of society?
So a pillar of society is a person that has high morals and is
He contributes?
That's right, is often thought of as a leader in society.
Exactly. So that is a really good expression to learn. It's related to staple by meaning, as Chris pointed out, a pillar of society, a staple food. Those are 2 great expressions. Our next sentence, Japanese people have enjoyed noodles for over 1,000 years. I think that's really straightforward. Let's move on. The first noodles came from China and were introduced around 800 CE, which means 800 of the Common Era. That is what we used to call AD.
Be careful of these dates. Sometimes there is conflicting evidence. I remember specifically teaching from our textbook, our social studies textbook in the United States, that Chinese people have claimed to have archaeological evidence where noodles are around 4,000 years old. There's a specific cookbook referring to noodles in the Han Dynasty. So take these, let's just say this, noodles are really old. And if you see a conflicting date, don't get too upset about it. We obviously don't have a noodle from 4,000 years ago, right? So we need to go based on archaeological evidence, which is often inferred from information around it.
Things that we happen to dig up, and then
right.
we conclude things.
Quite literally.
Take this with a grain of salt.
There's another good food expression.
That's right. To take something with a grain of salt is, I am telling you this for reference only. It's something I've heard. I don't know how true it is. So I don't recommend that you believe it 100%. You probably should look into it a little further.
Yeah, but it's old, and that's the point.
Right. As time passed, noodles in Japan not only became widespread, but also developed some unique Japanese characteristics. And that is really true because if you have noodles in any of these Japanese shops, you can see how they have some very, very specific characteristics, especially, my mouth is starting to water, and I don't even like noodles that much. Okay, but for ramen noodles, especially the broth is very Japanese.
Very salty. That's what kept striking me as, man, this is salty food.
And they put specific things in it, you know, the egg and then the slice of fat pork and stuff like that. It's just very specifically Japanese.
Let's go to our next paragraph. The 3 most popular types of noodles in Japan are ramen, soba, and udon.
And I can remember back when I first learned about them, I had a hard time keeping them straight. But since living here, I know exactly the differences.
Do you have a preference? What's your favorite?
I just avoid wheat in general.
Oh, really?
I try to avoid.
Is it just a gluten thing? Or?
It's just starch. I try to avoid starch in general. I do eat some things, but I try not. I don't usually go out of my way to have something like noodles.
Yeah, my wife is very heavy into like full grain rices and adding additional healthy components to the rice. And so it's all very healthy. But I do really enjoy some noodles and like some udon, like in the winter. Oh, man, it's so good.
It's tasty, but I'll have to say something that involves age because I'm post-retirement already. And as your body gets older, you just don't need to eat as much. And if you eat a lot of starch, you're going to get fat really fast. So as you get older, you should eat less starch. I found I can just eat a meal of just vegetables and I'm full. I don't need starch. So that's the answer to that question.
Let's continue. Ramen, typically made from wheat flour, is usually thin and firm.
That's true. It is quite dense, but it's cut into smaller noodles and sometimes it's kind of crinkly. Let's go on.
The dough is kneaded and left to rest before it is stretched and cut into noodles.
The key word here is stretched. And how is dough stretchable? How can we make dough stretchable? Well, if it's stretchable, that means that the gluten has developed. The gluten in the wheat, when you mix it with water and then you let it sit for a while, the gluten starts to develop. So that means when you pull it, it will be stretchy. If you just eat it right after it's been mixed, it will be more powdery and more starchy. But if you let the gluten develop, and actually gluten is a kind of protein, it becomes stretchy.
Kneaded, be careful, we don't want to say the K, is literally a word that means to push together. It creates these tiny bubbles that grow during baking and help give it that nice texture we'll talk about in the next sentence.
And it's also a word you can use if you like to get massages.
Yeah. And cats do that nice kneaded thing with their hands when they're happy, too. It's so adorable.
Yeah, right. They will need you. But when you're a kid and you hear, you need me, what are you talking about? No, with a K in front of it, it means to push something and to squeeze it.
Let's continue. This step helps improve the texture of the noodles. We might also say the feel of the noodles or the mouth feel, which sounds like a weird word. It just means the way it feels in your mouth, quite literally.
And it's exactly what we were talking about just now. After the gluten develops and it becomes stretchy, in your mouth, the noodles become chewy.
Let's continue. They are often served in hot soup with either a soy sauce or miso base.
Which explains why they're so salty, right?
Let's continue. However, different regions or areas of Japan have their own specialty broths.
So the kind of broth or soup that people like to have their noodles in is different depending on the region, also on personal preference. So you can make it saltier, you can add dashi, you can add fish base. There's all kinds of things you can put into it. And so you have a lot of different varieties. Okay, next paragraph. While Japanese people recognize that ramen was inspired by Chinese cuisine, soba and udon are considered thoroughly Japanese creations. So people realize, ramen, yeah, we call it Japanese. It really came from China. They are aware of it. Sometimes you have something from another country. You don't realize it's from another country. But when I looked at ramen, I said, that sounds a lot like ramen.
That's right. So let's talk about ramen right here, right now. In paragraph 1, we mentioned that noodles are a staple food. Let's talk about more of a worldwide staple food in a sense for young people and people without a lot of money. And that's instant ramen.
Oh.
And everyone knows that instant ramen is a Japanese creation, except it's not. So ramen was invented in 1958 by Momofuku Ando. I want to just make sure everyone knows this. He was born in 1910. He had Taiwanese parents. This was a person born in the Japanese Empire. Everyone credits them to Japan, but this guy was Taiwanese. Ramen noodles are Taiwanese.
I hate to rain on your parade, but don't eat instant noodles.
Yeah,
they are highly processed food, and they are really, really bad for you. Sorry to add that in. Okay, many Japanese ask, do you like soba or udon? In the same way people in other cultures ask, are you a cat or a dog person?
That's pretty funny. For me, that's a stretch, but I don't actually know that. Okay.
I'm imagining a mouthful of cat hair. Because that happened to me once at a dinner. Okay. Not my mouth, but there was cat hair on the food. All right, next paragraph.
Soba noodles are made of buckwheat flour mixed with wheat flour. Buckwheat is an underrated, beautiful plant. Buckwheat is very attractive.
I think it's a grass rather than a grain.
Sure, it's quite lovely looking nonetheless. It's just really pretty, and I like looking at it.
And it's got a darker color.
Let's continue. They are usually light brown and served in either a hot or cold broth with a salty dipping sauce called tsuyu.
And in fact, tsuyu is just the Japanese word for soy sauce.
All right, so let's continue. Cold soba noodles served with seaweed and wasabi are popular in the hot summer months.
My mouth is watering. I can't help it.
Yeah, I said earlier that I don't appreciate Japanese food as much as other people, but wasabi's really good. Because I like horseradish also, and it's really tasty. I'm like, okay, I like this.
Okay, yeah, it's very piquant. It's very hot. Yeah, and the seaweed and stuff sprinkled over the noodles, it's kind of nice.
Let's continue. In winter, people enjoy soba in hot soup with fried tempura.
Okay, the hot soup and the soba sound fine, but I draw the line at fried tempura. It is battered and then deep fried, and my digestive system just freaks out.
All that oil. No thanks.
Yeah, no, I just don't. All right, so last paragraph. Udon noodles, also made from wheat flour, are unique because of their thickness, usually 4 to 6 millimeters. They are round, and they are indeed very thick and very heavy and dense.
For pastas, for like spaghetti, do you have a preference of noodles? And I know you said you avoid them.
I don't eat noodles.
So you don't. So you have no preference.
I like them. If I'm going to have them, I like thinner noodles.
You
very
like thinner.
Fine.
So angel hair or just regular spaghetti?
There's a kind of Chinese noodle that's made of many different grains that's quite thin.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a linguine guy, and I like udon, so I like the thicker noodles.
Hearty.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Udon noodles are soft, chewy, and filling, and that kind of sums it up. If you really want to get full fast, that's probably a good choice. Like soba, they can be enjoyed both hot or cold, depending on the season. My mouth is watering again. I'm imagining these cold noodles. They're really very
I was thinking
tasty.
about getting like cold noodles. We're not supposed to speak Chinese. I don't even know how to describe it in English. Liang mian. I was thinking, that'd be so good right now.
That's pretty much what I was thinking. And also, the word udon comes from a Chinese word. Look it up. You will be surprised. It means something totally different.
Okay, you got to tell me
No,
this.
I can say it in English. Wontons. You know what wontons
Oh, really?
are?
Yeah.
Udon is wonton.
I didn't know that.
Look it up if you need the Chinese characters. Similar to ramen, different regions of Japan boast their own style of udon noodles and broths.
Okay, Karen, before we wrap up for today, I have a question for you. We have a quiz. So I've been listening to a lot of sports radio. And they have this thing where they'll have you guess the stats of various players, okay? We're playing a version of this game. In paragraph 1, we talked about staple foods, and I have the world's 10 most popular staple foods. How many can you name?
Okay, I will try. So rice is certainly up there.
Rice is number 1.
And bread is certainly in there.
Specifically, think...
wheat.
Wheat. There we go. Wheat is number 2. So rice and wheat right off the bat.
Okay. Maybe not in the top 10, but in the Scandinavian countries, rye is very high. That's Scandinavian
rye
countries.
Is close, but it's not a top 10.
I guess it's probably not a top 10. Then there's cassava.
Cassava is number 5.
Yeah. So they make fufu in Africa. I think that's made of cassava.
Okay. Think of staple foods in the U.S. There's a lot of really easy ones.
Okay, corn.
Corn, number 3.
Yeah, corn. And that comes from the original inhabitants of the Americas. Corn. And gosh, what else do we eat in the U.S.?
McDonald's.
Oh, gosh. Sorry, potatoes.
Potatoes, that's right. Most potatoes end up as a McDonald's French fry. That's number 4. So you have the top 5.
Okay,
rice,
so potatoes,
wheat, corn, potatoes, and cassava.
Okay, I say I avoid starch. Potatoes are not quite so bad if you cook them up fresh. Don't eat French fries.
Okay, so we have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. These ones are a little trickier. I think number 8, the 3 sisters, if you remember your social studies.
Now you've got me.
Corn, something, and squash.
Beans.
Beans, there we go. Number 6.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Give me another hint.
All right, let's see. Birds like number 7.
I'm thinking of a grain that in Chinese is expressed as little rice.
Yeah, okay. So you're really close. How about caged birds? Caged birds like canaries love this.
Yeah, it's some kind of seed.
Okay, so millets. Millets.
That's little rice.
There we go.
Little rice is the Chinese word for millet, and it couldn't come to mind. Yeah.
Okay, so number 9 might be tough. Number 10 is common in South America.
Oh, okay. Well, cassava is common in South America. What else do they have?
Quinoa.
Oh, quinoa.
And last one is sorghum. So you got 8 out of 10, which was really, I think that's really bravo. That's not easy to do.
Sorghum is very North Chinese, and that's a very old grain. They ate that in ancient times.
Well, bravo. Good job.
I hope you all had a little fun with this game that put me on the spot. Okay, but we got through it. Tune in next time. We'll hear part 2 of today's article, Japan, a Paradise for Noodle Lovers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.